Yeah, recording the progress. The one on rehab. No. No. Yeah. It's gonna go funny. Yeah. Virtual. I want to go fund the kids. Him rehab. No. Not her. No, okay. All right, everybody, let's stand up. We're gonna start singing with "Come and Go with Me." Come and go with me to my father's house. Come and go with me to my father's house. It is joy. We're gonna have a good time. Everything's alright. So come and go through my heart. Come and go with me through my heart. Awesome guys. Well, we're gonna keep on streaming. So over here, hey. I hope it's good for a long time. When time ceases to hide his face, I guess When he shall come, his son, one day I will. Hi everyone, welcome to Nittany Church. Today I'm really excited to continue our series on Revelation. Last week we took a brief detour because we started talking about prayer, but this week and on we're going to be focusing on Revelation on Sundays. So stay tuned with us and you'll get to hear more about that. But to welcome us, we're doing something a little different today. I need 3 volunteers. We did this last year, if you have a good memory. Okay, I see Matthew Prangle. That's going to be the only child volunteer we had. I need 2 adult volunteers along with Matthew. You can play. You want to? Wow.
I'm happy to volunteer.
Spencer, one more. One more. So.
Here back. Come on now.
Is preach it with the prop. If you still want to participate, you can. So I'm going to explain to you what this is. So I have a pillow, and this is my prop. So my job is to preach maybe 30 seconds with this prop. So, for example, you know what? Pillows are really comfortable. They help you sleep in comfort. And God is the Father of all comfort. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
So as you go to bed at night, remember God sustains you and He'll wake you up in the morning because He comforts you. And that's how I just preached with this pillow. So you guys get to keep bed. And I get to keep bed.
First one. Jesus came down, changed the whole world. In the beginning, God created the earth. Everything. He made a whole lot more than just the earth. He made everything in it, which is pretty wild. And later, Jesus came down to it. All right? Sometimes it's easy to settle for like, I just want to change a little bit. But God had to change it. So we are in a movement to change the whole world. God wanted to change, save the entire world. There you go. I'm keeping this, by the way. He's got the whole world in his hands.
Oh boy. All right. Looks like we got some tissues here. So yeah, I mean, you know, Jesus is here for you through your sorrows. You're feeling ill, if you need support. Just like these tissues can support you, like when you're feeling down, when you're feeling like, you know, sick, either, you know, in body or in spirit, you can come to Jesus and find rest, hope, and, you know, find help to help you through whatever you're going through. So, welcome.
That was hard. Awesome job, y'all. All right, we're going to pray before we start the service, and then we'll continue with the song. So, dear God, thank you so much for today, Father. Thank you that we get to have fun in your name and be united together and be one family, God. We just pray for the service, that you be with Rob and Cindy as they bring your word. that we can be humble and learners as we learn how to navigate through Revelation today. We love you, and in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
All right, the worship team can come up.
Okay, so actually you can remain seated. This is going to be the communion preparatory song. It's Psalm 208 song, but it's called Remember Me. It's got a lot of lyrics, and it's a little long. If you know it, please join us. If you don't know it, feel free to meditate and listen, because there's a lot to listen to. I put out like all the books, so everybody should be having access to a book. Then you can have to share. So Psalm 208. So we're gonna sing it and do it. When Jesus gathered his 12 disciples to share the Passover meal once more, this is a sign of a brand new promise. I will be poured out to set you free. So be. Remember me. The breath of my body. Remember of my blood. Oh, there'll be none forget the praise when Jesus died on my place. Remember the sin of me. Remember all that set me free until we're standing face to face. Remember me. When Peter said I would not deny him, you know I'm ready to die with you. You will deny to Jesus and be exalted. Jesus denied him for the third time. Lord, you. So remember for my love, me not forget the face when Jesus died to my place. Remember sin upon me. Remember what I said me free until we're standing face to face. Remember me. When Jesus saw the adulterous woman, and he was asked if he should be someone, and made of us, he wrote on the ground. He said, the one without sin among you shall be the one to put the first stone. All the way. Go sing for the presence of my remember comes all for me not forget Jesus remember up on me of that set me free. Until we're standing face to face, remember me. When Jesus fought to his 12 disciples, after the victory from the grave, to all teach them of me. Go make disciples of every nation, baptizing them, teaching them the way until we forget the grace when Jesus died to my place. Remember sin that no one me. Praise the first time, praise to praise. Remember me, remember me. What?
Rob, thank you so much for doing that song. I really appreciate it because I know it's complex. And it's so beautiful to line and help me not forget the grace when Jesus died and took my place. And I'm just going to read from Mark 14, 22 through 25. If you have a Bible, you want to turn there, of course. And it says, while they were eating, he took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, gave it to them, and said, take, this is my body. Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them. And all of them drank from it. He said to them, this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. Truly I tell you, I will never drink again of the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new in the kingdom of God. And during this special Passover meal, Jesus went, we've read many times, but the significance of it, of the actual demonstrating that he was going to give his own blood and showing them his own blood, his body. And he had to gather the disciples, his beloved disciples together. And, it's just such an amazing thing when I think about what we get to receive today, because the covenant was really changed, the agreement that it wouldn't be, for certain people for a certain time, offering sacrifices to cleanse them from their sins, but for all time. But also, when I think about him there with the disciples, talking to them, knowing that it was his last days, he was really trying to also remind them of all the memories that they were friends. They were being taught and taught along. Of course, they didn't know all. And two of them, really had a bad turn. One came back, and again, demonstration for grace. Peter came back and was really the one that turned the world upside down. Disciples, but it was things like him calming. It was things like him calming the storms. To give them peace. It was watching him with children, seeing how he loved them, looking in people's eyes with so much compassion. It was, healing an outcast, crazy person. With the story of the Gerasenes and how he changed the trajectory of the bleeding woman's life from total humiliation with no hope. And just how he had no ego. Really, he had no ego. He was preaching to thousands of people and trying to figure out how can we feed them, how can we help them in so many areas. How wisely he spoke to the Pharisees. There's no hatred in him. He was blunt. He was representing the Father. He wasn't the Father. He was God on earth. But he, all the times, he took care of his mother. He was a great son. And, and we cried about Lazarus and how much he loved him and his friendship with him. And I rose early to be with the Father. He went to how he served, how he surrendered. And so I just think he showed us how to live, and that's something to remember too. Not, it's obviously said too, but he showed us how to live, he showed us how to love. That's what I want to share today. So we'll bow and thank God. Father, just so grateful to be able to share that, and so grateful for this this church and just your kingdom all over the world. But thank you that we're worshiping tonight. And thank you for your blood, for your sacrifice. And as we remember you right now. Jesus.
Amen. Amen. So that completes our community meditation. Stay with me. Let's sing Song 203, Lord of all. Two of three.
Life is just a song I'm singing for you.
Life is just a song I will sing for you. If life is just a path I will walk for you. Sing Jesus, Jesus, Lord, Jesus, Jesus, Lord.
Down on the earth to set me free.
Down on the earth to set me free. To break the chains that have a hold of me. Jesus, Jesus, Lord, Jesus, Jesus, Lord. Always by my side, you cover me. Always by my side to carry me. Say, Jesus, Jesus, Lord, the world that we know will pass away. That you give will forever stay. Say, Jesus, Jesus, Lord. Jesus, Jesus, Lord. Jesus, Jesus, Lord. Jesus, Jesus, Lord. Amen. All right. So we're continuing with the pretty long and thorough study of Revelation. So this is going to be probably a packed one. So we are juicy. What's that? Juicy. 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 So you get to hear Cindy first, but I'm going to blow you for a minute. So I guess we are finishing up chapter 1, and then we'll get into the first letter in chapter 2 to Ephesus. Do you want me to read the text real quick? Okay, no? Just gonna pray.
Yeah.
Let's pray. So I'll let Cindy do it all, but we're just gonna pray. Cindy will finish up chapter 1, and then we'll see how we do on time, and I'm gonna jump in for chapter 2. Okay? All right. So let's pray. Dear God, just thank you for just gathering us together to be with Cindy and I. Let your spirit speak through us, God, and just let us see what you and John and the Spirit have to say to the churches. Amen. All right. Oh, my goodness. Do that.
No. Okay, so yeah, like Rob was saying, we're picking up here, where Jameson left off. And this is where the vision that John had actually starts. This is kind of the beginning, and we are introduced to one like the Son of Man. If you have a headline, a header over your passage, it might say that instead of mine. Mine's older NIV anyway. But what I really want to try to do in this first piece is just to really introduce some concepts about how we can, what kind of lens we should be using when we're reading Revelation.
Because, you know, like Jameson said, it's an apocalyptic literature, but there's also letters in, there's also a bit of narrative, there's also prophecy in there. You know, so each one of those different kinds of genres requires a different set of tools.
All right.
That you can use to be able to draw the meaning out of that. So, but I definitely want to show you and examine how John uses symbols and imagery from the Old Testament, as well as his current cultural and historical context, to really communicate Jesus' sovereignty and what kind of impact that would have on this church. I think Jameson mentioned when he talked about this in the first sermon that he did, you know, it is a letter addressed to a church or to a group of churches in a particular time in their history, in a time when they're going through persecution, in a time when they really could use a lot of encouragement and, you know, calls for perseverance, you know, he calls, like, what is it, patient endurance, in verse 9. And so, and this is how he goes about trying to give them courage, is using imagery and reaching back into the Old Testament. So we don't need a special decoder ring, you know what I mean? It's actually right here. And also in some, you know, kind of outside historical documents that you can look at too. We have a lot of resources for that. So we'll just kind of go right into it. But before I have us read any text, I kind of want to, you know, do something a little funny as an introduction. Okay, so, all right, there's Lobster, so this is good. How many people know who this is? Okay, great. All right. Right. How many of you remember this episode?
I know what happens.
You know what happens, right?
Yeah.
You know what happened right before
Yeah.
this moment, right? That's perfect, but not all of us do, right? Not all of us have watched this show. Not all of us knows what's going on. But this I want to really use as an instruction piece to show what John is doing. You know, the concept of a meme, you know, is a very, very old one. How we use it today, or how I've used it, is like, if I'm responding to somebody and I use a meme, it's because there's a cultural reference that we're both going to get, you know what I mean? And we'll get a chuckle out of it. And you can look at this and say, like, oh, it's true. It's an agreement to whatever somebody says, you know, and you can get some meaning out of it. But you get even more meaning when you know that right beforehand, he was slapped by Jim after telling a knock-knock joke. Actually, it was a ding-dong joke, okay? Like, I want to send you guys the link to this because it was so funny. We were watching it today and we were just cracking up. But anyway, moving on. But I mean, this is kind of what the imagery in apocalyptic literature really is about. There's a place that John is reaching back to in the Old Testament. And his Jewish readers would read this and see this imagery and they would be like, ah, I know exactly where this is. I know exactly what this is talking about. I know this came from the book of Ezekiel. I know this came from Exodus. I know this came from Zechariah. You know, they had their Bible, you know, kind of, they were swimming in it. You know what I mean? They would memorize passages. They would memorize whole books. They would memorize the whole Torah, you know, like they know their Bible so well. And so they were so steeped in that like the imagery that we read in Revelation, although it's alarming to us and we think it's really weird and hard to understand, the Jewish readers would be like, no, I know exactly what he's talking about, you know? And so what I'm going to do here is just really show some imagery of Jesus. And it's a fantastic imagery of Jesus. It would be great if it was literal, you know, and maybe it was, but there's actually another layer that if you know where to look, you can get even more and deeper meaning from it. So if I can have two volunteers to read, I'm going to split this up in two. So we're going to do, Revelation 1, starting in verse 12 to 16. Can I have somebody read that? All right.
I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And when I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And among the lampstands was someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe, reaching down to his feet and with a golden sash around his chest. The hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand, he held 7 stars, and coming out of his mouth was a sharp, double-edged sword. His face was like the sun shining in all its brilliance.
And we'll just finish up with, can I have another volunteer? 17.
When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand on me and said, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever. And I hold the keys of death and Hades. Write therefore what you have seen, what is now, and what will take place later. The mystery of the 7 stars that you saw on my right hand, and of the 7 golden lampstands is this. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches."
Perfect, thank you so much. So here we go. Hello, my name is Jesus, right? This is, John is seeing Jesus in his glorified state. He knew him when he walked the earth, and he saw him when he died on the cross. And he saw him again when he resurrected. But here, it's even more so. Like, it was pretty amazing to see him resurrected and see, the wounds in his hands, wound in his side. But now, it's a completely different view of Jesus, and it is a powerful one. It is a scary one. It's an image that made John just fall on his face, as though dead. He probably fainted, what I mean? But it was such a vision and such a shocking one that, really just took his breath. But this is the victorious Jesus we see in his rightful place in the heavens. And then we have all this other imagery. We have lampstands, we have, what he's wearing, what he has in his right hand. Well, what do these all mean? You know what I mean? Is this really literally what he looked like as he was hanging out in front of John? Maybe, but I think that there's something more that John is trying to communicate by using this imagery. So we're going to take a look at some of those. Like I said, John is steeped in the Old Testament. This is all the scripture that they have. The New Testament is not around yet. It's not been canonized. Nothing has been done. We have some few stray letters here and there, but nothing that has been put together in the way that you have your Bible right now. So real scripture that he has at the time is just Old Testament. Torah. So first I want to look at the lampstand. So I have 3 references here. You can copy them down, look them up later. I'm not really going to go read them. But suffice to say that in Exodus, this is instructions for how to construct the lampstands. So the lampstands are basically the menorah. If you read through what Exodus says, it is, it is a lampstand that has 3 branches. 3 branches on one side, 3 branches on the other, and then you have the middle one that is also lit. They have cups that look like flowers. And that's where your lamp is. That's where you put your oil in. That's where you light the lamp. So it was used in the tabernacle. It was used in the temple later when Solomon built it. But it really signified the light of God within the tabernacle and the temple. There's a section where it talks about the consecrated bread. There were 12 of them, signifying the 12 tribes of Israel. And the light from the lamps shone on the bread as a way to show that God's presence is with Israel. So what we can tell, what we can infer from this is that John finds himself in the temple. And this is the place where heaven and earth meets together. And so he finds himself in the holiest of holy places. So that can kind of give you a picture of where he's at and what these lampstands represent to the Jewish people. Let me see. The clothes that he's wearing, because it goes into a lot of detail, you know, it's about the robe reaching down. Let's see, golden sash around his chest, you know, head and hair were white before white snow. I'll get to that later, but I'll focus on the clothing here, sorry. But I have these other scriptures, you know, trying to match up with like what it says here to what it's harkening back to. You know, the image of the Son of Man is present in Daniel, it's present in Ezekiel. In Isaiah 6, this is Isaiah, he has a vision in the temple and he sees the throne of God. And the robe that, you know, God is wearing, it like fills the whole place, right? Daniel 10:5, it talks about this golden sash, you know, and the person that's wearing the golden sash is actually a messenger, and he's bringing Daniel kind of a prophecy from God about what's going to happen. So I know this is very heady, and you do probably have to go back and read some of this stuff on your own, you know, but suffice to say, like, you know, again, there's a pattern here. There's a place that this appears previously, you know, and that you can find it and figure out some of the meaning. But so these are callbacks to other revelations, like, you know, Ezekiel, Daniel, Isaiah, they all had vision of God. They all had the same experience that John's having right here, right now. They had it back in that day. And there's some indirect references to priestly clothing. So, you know, we can kind of infer too that it's showing Jesus as prophet, priest, and king. He's all of those things. Hair as white as wool. And I have two scriptures here, one in Daniel, one in Isaiah. But in Daniel, it's talking about the Ancient of Days. So it's kind of like trying to express, like, but beyond ages, right? And then in Isaiah, it talks about the purity of the color white, you know what I mean? In contrast with the crimson red of sin, you know? So it's showing both that, like, he is in line with Ancient of Days, and he's also purifying man, right? Okay, so then we go into eyes like blazing fire, feet like glowing bronze. Okay, this is really scary. In Daniel 10, it goes through it. I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen with a belt of gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like topaz, his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice like the sound of a multitude. You know, this is so descriptive, but it communicates strength. You know, eyes like blazing fire. Fire is a refining thing. You know, we can do metal work with fire. We can do a lot of good things with fire. It's not always destructive, you know, but it is, you know, something that like can purify us, refine us. And that's what Jesus does for us, you know, and his eyes can reach into our very souls, right? You know, and like, and see like what's going on, and not in a, like, I'm going to destroy you kind of way, but kind of like, let me help you, you know, let me purify you. And his feet, they're like a foundation, you know, he is rooted in strength. And that's what that is really communicating to him, about him. Voice like the sound of rushing waters. And I saw the glory of the God of Israel coming from the east. His voice was like the roar of rushing waters, and the land was radiant with his glory. You know, you think about like white water rivers, right? You know, waterfalls, like the sound of rushing water. In the desert, you know, they have wadis because it's usually very dry. But when they have the rains and the water rushes, and they make these huge falls and they flood the valleys, like, you know, that's like the picture that, you know, the Jewish people would have in their minds, what this is like. And it's scary and it's intimidating, you know, but it's also not like, can also be soothing. You know what I mean? Like if you've ever listened to just water, if you just sat by in the waves or something and you just let the noise like, you know, go over you. And that's what this is. Communicates, like his voice is this way. His voice has this quality. So you can see this is all very poetic language, right? This is not meant to be literal, really, but it's meant to paint a picture in your mind about who Jesus is, how John encounters this Jesus. And it's supposed to put you in a place and evoke a feeling, you know, evoke an emotion within you. This is what we're working with. Okay, so we're gonna get into this interesting part with the 7 stars. So I want to make a point that like John not only reaches back to the Old Testament, imagery, but he also uses the current Roman cultural symbols. And then he goes and he subverts them. And he takes the power out of those images. So this is a point actually from Domitian, who was emperor at this time. And he and Nero were responsible for some of the greatest persecutions that the Christians had to live through. So on this coin, it's on the face of it, it's the face of Domitian, and on the back, it's Domitian's son, who's sitting on a spear, which is probably, supposed to be like the earth. And then he's surrounded by stars. He's surrounded by 7 stars. And if you try to look up Roman coins, there's actually quite a few Roman coins that have 7 stars, imprinted on them. 7 stars for the Romans, these were the planets that they could see without the aid of a telescope. So we're thinking sun, moon, we're thinking Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars. Those are 7. So for them, this signifies the cosmos. And the control of the cosmos is usually given to the emperors because they were basically divine. They were seen as like sons of God in their own way. But Jesus is like, no, that's my title. And I have control of the cosmos. And they're in my right hand, which is the action hand, right? This is the hand that's used all the time. This is the sword hand, right? So his work is in the cosmos. The double-edged sword. I mean, I think we can always think like, Hebrews 4:12, right? That's the first thing that we tend to think of when we hear double-edged sword. There's a scripture here from Isaiah. He made my mouth like a sharpened sword. In the shadow of his hand, he hid me. He made me into a polished arrow and concealed me in his quiver. So we do have an Old Testament reference, but we also see that the double-edged sword, the gladius, was the Roman weapon of choice. It was carried by the infantrymen, which we know that they were used for conquest. That's basically what that is. But, notice that he's not drawing the sword. He's not using the sword. He's using his words, it's coming out of his mouth. And those words can cut us deeply, they convict us. But they also are useful for healing in a way that they are life-giving, right? Okay, and space was like the sun shining. And you could definitely think about the transfiguration. You could think about Moses when his face was radiant after meeting with God. In Numbers 6:25, this is the blessing that, the Jews would give to their people. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious. So here we are. I've got this image on the internet, and yeah, it's just such an amazing image. But you see that it's not just about the picture. It probably wasn't like this. I mean, we have to understand that this is not like necessarily. But what is this conveying to you? What did this convey to the people in that day? And I have the other things. I am the first and last. I am the living one. I hold the keys of death and Hades. Hades is a well-known god of the underworld in the Roman world as well. So, but it's an extension not just to the Israelites, an extension to all mankind. He is this for all of us on the earth, right? So what feelings could these images have evoked in the Christians during Jesus? It could give them the courage to have the patient endurance that they would need to live through some of the persecution. What feelings should this hold for you today? We can look at the world and think it's so messed up, it's so crazy, life is hard, it's really challenging, but Jesus is still sovereign today.
Right.
Do you believe that he's still sovereign? He is as much sovereign today as he was in this moment in time for John. And we need to hold on to that. So, we end our introduction of Jesus, and we'll see that he has something to say.
Yep.
And so with that, I'll bring Rob back up.
Well, that's anything. Yeah, Rob.
It's, yeah. All right. So like it's raining out, you got nowhere to go, right? So we can sit and listen to some more. All right. So, all right. So we're gonna pick up in chapter 2. As we kind of wrapped up there through 1, kind of, I think one of the big takeaways is Jesus is in control. I mean, these are folks that are under persecution. They're going under all kinds of hardships, and struggles, and it looks like under Roman dominion that it could look like Christianity is not working. Like Jesus is not even in control. Like we're just getting burned and persecuted. It's not great, Jesus is coming in reassuring, like, I got this. I've had this. I have it now, and I'll have you in the future. It gives him an image of why he's actually in control, both in what they can see and what they can't. So kind of, I think that's really kind of more part of the establishment of credibility. If you're looking kind of at the traditional kind of Greek rhetorical model of, ethos, pathos, logos, this is just, okay, here's who I am. This is why you should listen to me, in the same way that we have Jesus saying in Matthew 28, all authority in heaven's been given to me, right? And heaven and earth, all the authority that there is mine. To me, that's the big takeaway from the end of chapter 1, is all the authority that there is mine. So therefore, here's what I have to say. So then we launch into, which is going to take us 7 weeks we're going to do a week each on each of the letters to the 7 churches through chapters 2 and 3. So we're going to kick off with Ephesus here. So I'm just going to start with the text there. To the church in Ephesus, to the angel of the church in Ephesus write, these are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and walks among the 7 golden lampstands. I know your deeds, your hard work, and your perseverance. I know that you cannot tolerate wicked men, that you have tested those who claim to be apostles but are not, and have found them false. You have persevered and have endured hardships for my name, and have not grown weary. Yet I hold this against you. You have forsaken your first love. Remember the height from which you have fallen. Repent and do the things you did at first. If you do not repent, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place. But you have this in your favor. You hate the practices of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give the right to eat from the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. So we kind of have a pattern, that we're just going to read the first letter there, but if you read through the rest of the letters, there's like stuff that's going well, stuff that's not going well, and some promises, generally speaking, right? There's kind of a pattern there. Most of the churches get some critique, a couple of them don't. There's a couple of interesting ones in there. But Ephesus, we know a fair amount, about Ephesus. We got a whole letter from Paul, we've got a report from Luke in Acts. We kind of have some idea what's going on there. It wasn't so bad that long ago, but by the time you get a couple generations maybe later, once you get to Revelation, getting a little iffy, maybe. They got, some things to work on. And these things that they have to work on are not unique to them. I mean, I do believe these are written to actual churches in that actual place and time. I don't think those letters to churches are symbolic. There's other, interpretations of Revelation. I think that's different phases of the church age, but I'm not really going to get into that. I think these are really just to those actual churches. They definitely all existed. But they had, we can go, hey, well, so these guys are in the first century. They're pretty close to Jesus and the apostles. Like, they should have it on fairly straight. But we see, through the letters in the New Testament, a lot of churches didn't have things on straight. They had struggles, even early on in the first 3 decades. And these guys, a little later, also had struggles. We can go, well, how are we supposed to get this figured out 2,000 years later, a completely different time and culture with an ocean between us? How are we going to do this any better? So that can be kind of a struggle to think through, and look at a book like Revelation and go, I'm having trouble even understanding it. How am I supposed to even know what the advice is on how to get this fixed? But I think we have the encouragement, from Jesus saying, like, I am in control. I rule the churches, right? The 7 stars, the 7 lampstands. The stars says are the angels, the messengers to the churches. and the lampstands are the churches. And here he says, this is kind of cool, like on each of the letters that we're going to read, of all the little descriptors, or big descriptors really, of Jesus describing himself at the end of chapter 1, those are picked out, where you'll see tiebacks to that, where, Revelation is actually already referencing itself. So these are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and walks among the 7 golden lampstands. Like we just heard that self-description in 1. If you look through the rest of the letters to the churches, one of those descriptors from 1 will be sprinkled throughout there. But he's saying, I walk among you. I'm not far, right? And it's not like it's just a dominion thing. Yes, I'm in control, but I'm with you. I'm here. So I think there's two big things that personally stood out to me in the letter to Ephesus. There's a lot we can kind of dive into, and kind of the overall, just kind of the outline through there, right? We saw the 7 stars. He's talking about self-describing, saying knows their deeds. So they got a list of good deeds, some things you're doing. Got hard work, you're persevering, you don't tolerate wicked people, you're testing false apostles, persevering through hardships, you're not giving up. That's great. And any practice the neglect that you want to unpack. That was one of those red flags. We like to kind of say, like, you see something like, what's that? Well, you should dig into that, right? For me, I was always like, read this, okay, Nicolaitans, throw away it. Okay, they're doing some bad stuff, and these guys don't like it, and God doesn't like it, so win, doing good. But it's interesting when you look at who were those people, what were they up to? So pick at that. And then so that was kind of good. It's bad, well, okay, but you're forsaking the first love, right? And that to me is one of the most poignant things. Because these are written to the actual churches, so there's lessons for that particular church. We kind of know that, in Ephesus, it's pretty much believed that what they kind of fell into was kind of just what I would describe as sort of a cold-hearted Orthodox. It's just like, we're just focusing on believing the right stuff. We're not really loving it. They're not really loving God. Like that could be easy to do. Personally, that could be easy for me. That's kind of, I don't know, a little bit my default. You know what I mean? I think I dare say it's a pattern that you may have seen in our fellowship churches at times, where it's like, well, we believe the right stuff. And I think we definitely. I think the love of the disciples isn't the hallmark and earmark of how you know the disciples. So I think we've been good at that. I think. But it's easy to, let that grow cold and let them kind of be left for God to grow stale, especially if you go further along. I mean, when I hear this, it's like go back and do the things we did first. I just think about my days as a baby Christian. There's just so much more childlike and relying on God for like the dumbest stuff, like little things. I don't know. I mean, I think really as we get into this 40 days of prayer. I mean, that's a super great opportunity to kind of return to that. I mean, you heard Kit Cummings talking about, he's like semi-embarrassed talking about this little thing with the shells. He walked all over, have shells, you're fucking shells, he's sorry about that. And we could go, all right, but there's that level of reliance on God and expecting God to come through, even in things that seem small and things to other people. But those things can really help build your faith, and I just remember, like, as a baby Christian, just thinking, like, I know God help me balance my checkbook, or different things like that were just odd or small, or like, late for work, help it to not matter, help that meeting be canceled. It was canceled, but gosh, didn't matter, I was late, I just saw God come through with those little things, really. Whereas now it can be like, well, I pray for the big things, and then I forget about it, and it doesn't happen, and I get kind of jaded and cynical. I'm not even really relying on God for small stuff anyway, because I'm like, like it. But he does, so I don't know. Those are some of the things for me. I don't know. We could kind of open it up on some stuff on. I was at the Flip this morning. We ran this morning. I got to run on Flip for the first time I've run in like 2 years. I'm feeling it. Had a little bit of but it's like, hey, so Flip, how's it going? The first few months as a disciple, and because it's inspiring to talk to the young Christians. You're like, how is it going? You're trying to like recapture some of that, that joy, that zeal, from the early days, and I think it's really important to not let that go. You're getting a little bit into the hermeneutic on here, but I just feel like there's definitely a marriage metaphor that's kind of being drawn there. Kind of look back to some of the things, what they would have heard, oh, you've forsaken your first love. It's kind of harking back to things like in Jeremiah, you know, when I saw you and recognized that you were ready to love, and I covered you with my part of my garment, and I washed you, and I cleansed you, and made you, you know, radiant. Like there's those kind of things of God as a husband to us, right? And so it harkens to that marriage relationship. And I think of like, okay, what do I do in our marriage to keep our marriage fresh? You know, because it's a marriage to God that we're in, you know, and like any relationship without maintenance that can become, you know, stale, you know. And one of the things that really helps us, and it probably helps many married couples, is just remembering like things in your courtship and dating and like, yeah, I remember the things we did there, and remember this date or that, whatever, you know. Like I still feel that way, you know what I mean? And it just it brings you back 20 years from, you know, to that time, you know, or like, and my heart is still exactly that, you know, and I think God is calling us to have that kind of refreshment in the relationship to keep it new, you know. He's saying, there's stuff we used to do together. Remember that? That was awesome. Like, let's get back to that. Like, I missed you. You know, this is what I hear Jesus saying in that. I think the church in Ephesus really needed that at that time. Be reminded to go back and do the things we did at first. So some of the challenges that they had too, right? So he says also, you know, remember the height from which you had fallen. Like there's a big difference from where you were and where you are now. Let that cut your heart a bit, you know, and see where you were and where you are now. And it's not to guilt you out, but like, let's get back to there. But the challenge that they had there, one of the ones that sticks out to me, the Nicolaitans, there's the false apostles that, you know, talk about, and, you know, one of the messages we did back in the letters of John, you know, talking about the Antichrist and all this stuff, and people that would, you know, propagate false teachings that they had to go and fight against and undo. You know, he's like, that's good. Like you're recognizing, like he's kind of a bit of a pat on the back, like holding on to good teaching is a good thing. Like you can have a little bit too much of that and be so focused on your orthodoxy that you forget, you know, to love each other and to love me. That's where they were calling to. But still, you know, guarding, you know, the gospel, so to speak, protecting sound doctrine is super important. And so this thing about the Nicolaitans. So does anybody ever heard of the Nicolaitans? I mean, it's only at least two. Yeah, like Ephesus gets a pat on the back, like good job, you know, fighting those guys, and then Smyrna's like, not so good job because you don't leave with those guys. But what were the Nicolaitans? So this convicted me. I looked at them. The Nicolaitans, you know, I'm studying, you know, this out. I'm doing a little bit of research on that. All right. So it's mentioned by a few of the early church fathers, Irenaeus, Hippolytus. We know that God hates their practices. From Irenaeus, you know, in Acts 6:5, you know, it's probably one of the seven, like the original 7 deacons that were selected for like deacon churches. It's that Nicholas and guys that followed him most likely. Nicholas from Antioch, Judaism, they were advised on restrained adultery. From Clement of Alexandria, said it's probably a false name taken to give legitimacy to a group that had more practices, especially in regards to character. Okay. The deal was though, when you kind of look at when you unpack the meaning of the name, it's basically like kind of one who controls or lords over. You know, so you know, all through the book of Revelation, we studied a while back about escaping the beast and how kingdoms be chosen. And this is not about control and empire, right? I mean, it's a big theme that we're going to hear repeated a lot in Revelation about empire and the Lamb, right? I mean, the Lamb is the one is Jesus, whose practices we're supposed to follow. Does not look like empire at all. Does Jesus win? Absolutely. Does Jesus use the methods of empire and the tactics of empire to accomplish that? He doesn't like fight fire with fire on them. He absorbs the abuse, right? And that's what he's calling us to do in terms of how we lead God's people, right? He's saying like, don't do like pagans do, like lord it over, you know, each other, but you know, be servants of one another instead, right? So you have that in Acts, where the first deacons are selected, right? To just meet the needs of the people, so the apostles could kind of take care of preaching the word, right? And so what you have here essentially was somebody who was selected to serve, essentially apparently turning off into a group of people that just kind of dominated and controlled the people instead of serving. And it wasn't like this was a group from outside the church that they were struggling with. This is something they grew up inside, right? It became known as people who dominated and were authoritarian in their nature and just, tried to exert control over people. Like, yeah, I've seen that. And it's so it can be very convicting where it's like, we know not to do this. And God's saying, like, I hate that. I hate what they're doing there, right? They're basically saying, okay, I see stuff that works out in the Roman Empire, and it's kind of hilarious. So Joseph will talk about it. So TikTok trend, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? Since this has been going around, like asking every man, husband, boyfriend, or how often do you think about the Roman Empire? Well, turns out, like, most men think about the Roman Empire pretty often, like maybe daily. I mean, it's kind of funny where it's like there's a lot of things that, well, if you're driving on roads or you speak English or, if the days of the week or the months, you're talking about the Roman Empire. It's true. But, yeah, so, but when you're living under the Roman Empire and you observe their methods, you're like, well, I've got the Pax Romana, life is good. We've got roads, we've got a common language, a common culture, living in this thing with, there's nobody at war with us because who would be that dumb to go to war against the Roman Empire? This is fine. So this works, right? So it must be good. It must be kind of maybe God ordained because we're winning, obviously, right? And you start to just kind of adopt those practices and say, like, well, maybe Mike does make right. What's wrong with that, really? Or to wire back to today, we'll probably have lots of commentary about the parallels between empire here and American culture and ways. But it could be corporate culture. Like take the countries out of it. It could just be, well, I saw this work in my company and I just drafted that stuff. Just did it that way. Maybe there's a top-down kind of leadership structure or some kind of results-oriented thing, or maybe we're driving metrics or whatever it is, and I bristle against that stuff. But I see what Jesus is warning them against the practice of Nicolaitans is like, do not adopt practices of empire and go and try to use it in my church. I hate them. Don't do it. Right? It's like I've given you a pattern. I've shown you like a self-sacrificial way to lead. Right? He's going like, I'm the one who was slain. We'll see later how he's worthy to open the seals because he's the lamb that was slain. Like, I didn't do this through force. I did it through sacrifice, right? So don't go taking methods of the world empire and introduce that to church. So those are two of the biggest things that pointed out to me. I mean, there's kind of definitely more we can get into on that because there's encouragement for them too, right? This wasn't all like gloom at all. They definitely had encouragement before, and like you're doing some things well, right? You've got a few things to work on. But then there's also a promise for them, right? It says at the end, what do we have? Him who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I'll give the right to eat from the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. That sounds good. I want that. I mean, I think what Jesus is really encouraging is like, it's not like I'm leaving you hanging here with, do it on your own. You screwed it up, just fix it. What's wrong with you? It can definitely kind of feel like that sometimes, but from everything that we heard in chapter 1, like the image of Jesus could be scary. It could be super reassuring. You're like, finally, somebody who's in control is on my side. We will win. This is going to be good. And Jesus coming in at the end saying, like, I am with you to do this. Like, I'm ready to get back into that relationship with you, to keep it fresh. I'm not just waiting like for you to get your act together, but I'm here to help you, encourage you, guide you, bring you along. And when you get there, I will help you. I will give you the right to eat the tree of life. So why don't we wrap it there? We'll pray. And song for announcements. Dear Heavenly Father, guys, thank you so much, God, for loving us, God, for sending us this book, which can be complicated at first, God, but to give us the hearts and minds to go and look through it, to look through our Old Testament. I thank you for what Cindy unpacked in chapter 1, God. I thank you for calling us back to discipleship, really, calling us back to a childlike devotion to you, God, and to know that Jesus is the answer to all these problems. We'll see in the other sect churches, God, that Jesus is the answer to all those things. He's ready and wait, work with us and bring us back to Jesus' name. Amen. Absolutely.
All right, thanks so much, Rob and Cindy, for that reminder of the person of Jesus and his authority, and for another reminder that we're to serve and love one another and not to domineer over one another. So some closing announcements. If you would like to give contribution to our church here, you can find that information on that in the Tithely app. If you have any questions on how that works, how you do that, you can just come find me and I can help you out. This Wednesday, we're going to have our midweek at the Blvd Church right here, continuing our series on the 40 days of prayer. So be there because the lesson will probably start around 7 o'clock sharp. And then next Sunday, our service will be right here. We're going to have a potluck. So get excited for that. And the Crankle family group will be providing that. Some good stuff, some good food. So keep an eye out if you're in the family group on that update for that information. And for the campus ministry, we got a retreat coming up in Camp Friendship, Virginia. Oh yeah. It is just going to be a time of fellowship, of fun, late nights, and really impactful lessons.
What's new about that?
Absolutely. So if you need to register for that, find me. I can help you out. And lastly, we will be having our trunk or treat October 22nd, about a month from now. We're going to be collaborating with the Blvd Church. And I mean, how do you explain a trunk or treat? I mean, I think
It's like Halloween dry run.
It's like a diorama.
Yeah, I guess people just roll up with a car, a theme, decorate it, get some stuff, get some candy. It's a good time. So if you want to bring your car, decorate your own trunk, there's going to be an email that I'm going to send out tomorrow that has a sign-up sheet for that. So if you're not on the email chain, let me know. I'll figure out a way to get that to you. So that's how you can sign up. And also candy is going to be provided. So it's not like each car has to get their own candy. But that being said, there is that candy that will be provided is going to need to be volunteered. So if you have it in your heart to buy some candy to donate to the trunk or treat, there's a tub right there next to the counter there that you can donate the candy to. And so that's all for announcements. We're going to sing one last song and then you'll all be dismissed for fellowship.
Speaking of fellowship, we're going to stand up and sing, "What a Fellowship." What are the odds? All right. Wow, it was even put up there. Yeah, that's crazy. Literally, I don't know how they did it. Actually, I have a guess. Somebody told somebody to put it up. All right. What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arm. What a blessedness, what a peace divine, leaning on the everlasting arm. Dance of your love, leaning on the everlasting arm. Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim way, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how rose, leaning on the everlasting arms, leaning on say thanks your Lord, leaning on the everlasting arms. What have I to beg? What have I to do? Leaning on the everlasting arms. I have been speak with my Lord again. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning. Thanks to your Amen, everybody. Enjoy the fellowship. Great.
Right.